when on the real set. Okay, so I shall start. Oh, not bad. You got enough memory to sustain. Okay, good.
I'm
This is
sure it
good.
should be enough.
Yes, now it's recording. So, not to worry. This is good. I like this.
I better get my book in case.
Yes,
I want to read
yeah, I need
poems.
to promote your book. And,
The opening was fun.
yeah,
the launch.
yeah. You know, you'll be exactly the same format. Like what I'm doing with you right now, where it'll be fun, and because a lot of other authors have told me that I should add some fun into the conversation, so maybe I should do. You want to drink some water? Or
I just had my
Okay.
coffee.
because I have to.
You go through the emails from Somsri,
Yeah.
and then you pull one out where there is a mention of people like Norainit and so on for the seminar we're going to have. Okay? Somsri, you just go through. Huh?
Your email or?
My email. Probably from deleted items. Huh?
Okay.
Yep.
The best of Edwin Thumboo.
I hate this. No, my name is pronounced as Edwin Thumboo.
Thumboo, sorry, Edwin,
no,
Dr. Edwin Thumboo.
And I was against best of, as you know, from the launch.
Okay.
I was dead against it.
Well, I'll ask you that question also. So that'll be fun. I'm sure that.
Because as I said, there's a suggestion of a slightly obituary flavor.
Okay, good. Thank God at least this is recording and the sound is on.
Good.
Mhm. Yep. So,
Give me your full name.
I'm Robin Steinberg.
Robin?
Robin Steinberg.
How do you get the Steinberg?
I get that all the time. I was adopted.
Good.
So,
Yep.
by a Jewish family.
Where is the family?
They're from the United States.
You go to Israel?
Yes. Oh, yes, I do. Okay,
Ask me about Israel if you want.
really? Okay, that's interesting.
Why is Israel important?
It's very important. It's a.
And do you know, I've been given, oh, they've taken it away. I've been given an arts award by the Israeli embassy.
Oh, that's nice.
And the takdir something or other. And the symbol is a model, silent model of Jerusalem in a globe.
Oh, very nice.
It's beautiful. So it's going to be at the exhibition. I said, you know, I know I'm being recorded. Some people say,
Don't worry.
I know. Some people say, look, you know, why are you taking this from the Israelis? I said, look, I will take it from anybody with whom I've got good relationships. And I said, look, the Israelis have helped the Center for the Arts.
You're Eurasian, right?
No, Indian, Indo-Chinese.
Oh,
Father
okay.
Indian, mother Teochew.
Oh, okay, great. That'll be an interesting question. So, are you ready?
Ready?
Ready.
That's ready. Hey, you must get another copy.
Oh, no, it's okay.
We can share?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
if you need to read,
Oh, yeah, I can pass it to you.
no, you can hold it.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So, if you're ready, I'm ready too, and
Yep.
we have at least got one audience there. You can clap all you want. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, well, so we just stay at the camera for a few seconds, and after I introduce you, after I've done the introduction, you just turn to me, and then we just have a conversation, and yeah, and do throw your voice. So that's how it is.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. If you're ready, I'm ready too. Hi, good morning. Welcome to the National Queen's Choice Online News. I'm Robin Steinberg. Welcome to our show again. And today we have a very distinguished poet here in Singapore, or perhaps even in the world, actually. And it's none other than Dr. Edwin Thumboo himself. And he's here with me this morning. And he's going to share with us about his life, as well as his latest release, The Best of Edwin Thumboo, Singapore Pioneer Poets itself. I know that most of you may be wondering what this butterfly really represents, but you will soon find out. And it's published by the by Epigram Publishers, and is now available worldwide, even online on Amazon. Dr. Edwin Thumboo is a award-winning Singaporean poet and academic who's actually regarded one of the pioneers of English literature in Singapore. And we're going to find out more about his passions right after this. Dr. Edwin, welcome to our show. And it's been a real honor to have you here on our National Critics' Choice platform, where all of us do a lot of reviews of books, and so forth on lifestyle and getting people to understand how all authors, work or inspired to do what they do. Let's begin from the time that you decided to begin your journey as a poet. It is said that you have, you have thought about being a poet for a very long time, and then it's also said that you started writing despite the arts during the development of Singapore. Is that true?
Yes, to the extent that all of us are children of history. I grew up at a time when there were very, 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 very many events happening. I was old enough to remember the Second World War, Japanese invasion, life during the Japanese occupation, and then what we call the liberation, when the British returned in September 1945, and gradually the growth of nationalism and so on, which coincided with my own moving into adolescence and early manhood, finishing secondary school, going to university, and so on. Now, your question about how I started writing poetry. In our home, there was an anthology of British poetry, lyrical poetry, a very famous anthology called Palgrave's The Golden Treasury. It had a lot of lyric poems in it, and I started reading. Desultory rather than systematic, but gradually it became more systematic, and I discovered that I had favorite poems I went back to. And looking back, I can see why I went back to these poems. Firstly, as I mentioned to you when we were talking about this recording, I have an Indian Tamil, Indian father and a Chinese mother. And within that hyphenation, if I could put it, the Chinese side was far stronger in terms of numbers, numeracy, in terms of numbers, in terms of extended family, and in terms of cultural presence. The Indian side was very westernized, western educated, so that the language of the home was English, when it involved my father and when we visited my aunties and my cousins and so on the Indian side, but heavily Teochew on the other side. And Teochew, I would say, depending on the age, which segment of mine growing up, was about, at times, 90% of the language I spoke during a day. And Teochew dominated up to the age of 9, when English started taking over slowly. But the Indian side, hardly any Tamil. I only know one sentence of Tamil. Intricate Tamil theory of it, which says I don't know Tamil, despite having a Tamil name. But the Chinese side had a lot of nursery rhymes, a lot of stories about La Cha and nursery rhymes like Ti Ting Jik Cha Ti Ai Kui Tzu Cha. What I learnt from these nursery rhymes were really two things. One, a sense of rhythm in language. Secondly, the startling juxtaposition of images. Sky, star, eagle, and so on and so on. Which really, challenges a young imagination, a young child. And quite often you know the nursery rhyme, but the significance of the rhyme dawns on you a bit later. The different layers. And this is true perhaps of many nursery rhymes. For instance, the English nursery rhymes I learned. There are deeper significances which are non-nursery really, if anything, shouldn't be part of the nursery. It came later. So there was always this fascination with words, the interest in words. And when I went to secondary school, I had the benefit of very good teachers. And that has always been important. And that, again, helped to push the interest in words. And when you read poems and you are fascinated with words, you suddenly tell yourself, why don't I give it a bit of a try? And you start experimenting, putting words together. And then words become lines. You know, they become phrases, and then phrases become lines, and lines become stanzas, and so on. And then you use various devices like rhythm, form, structure of poem. And that's how I started, really. But I owe a great deal to my teachers and to the reading I did.
Now, you spoke about the Second World War that you have been through. At what age did you witness?
I was born late 1933, so when the war started, December 7th or 8th, 1941, I was already about 8-9 years old. And I remember the first bombs, really the first raid, because we lived in Mandai, which is quite far from town, as you know. And at that time, the 11th milestone, we had milestones in those days, not kilometers. That means just past the present-day Bukit Panjang, there were oil tanks. And naturally, in any war, the first targets are facilities, military facilities. So the oil tanks were bombed and they burned. Now, I could see the smoke and the flames and the flaring early in the morning from where we were in Mandai. Of course, we were all woken up, you see, to see what's happening. And it was very exciting because you're a boy. It's a spectacle. You don't know the deeper significances, the consequences of this. Of course, before that, you could hear the adults talking about war, and especially the Chinese side talking about the Japanese invasion of China, Manchuria, and so on and so on, and they're ravaging along the coastal parts of China, including Swatao, where the family came from, and so on. So that was a really memorable, within inverted commas, introduction to the war and to the Japanese occupation, really.
And has that experience itself impact you in such a way that that you would draw some of these memorable experiences in poetry?
Yes, it has happened in this sense. But it's not merely the poetry. It's a larger lessons of war, really. Over the years, one formulates and distills and makes systematic your insights into what war is and what war can mean. The first thing that struck me is wars are always cruel. Wars are always inventive, and maybe cruelty is a great inspirer of inventions and so on. Cruelty brings the best and the worst out of people. The worst when you inflict, the best when you save. You get these feelings. That's why I'm perhaps more open in looking at the atrocities of war. You recognize the tragedy, but you also recognize that there are moments of great nobility and so on. And you also know war as a great instrument of change, the social change that war brings, the experience of war, the redistribution of wealth, the relocation of peoples, the dislocation it brings about, the relocations and the re-knitting of families and so on. These are all fundamental shaping experiences. So for me, the war was a phase. And what struck me about the Japanese occupation is that, looking back in history, the Japanese were the first to bring the whole of Southeast Asia under one rule, one government. Nobody else has done that before. This is the first time, or that was the first time in the whole of Southeast Asia, up to Papua New Guinea almost, from Burma right down, the whole of Southeast Asia, under one government, one colonialism. Okay, about 3.5 years, but at least it brought there. And I still remember we all had to follow Tokyo time. So that when you bow to the Japanese flag, they're doing the same thing in Japan. And the whole of Southeast Asia, I think, shared the same time zone. So we were getting up much earlier than usual, and so on. So I've drawn on them. In fact, one of the poems I have, one of the poems I wrote recently, which is not in the book because it was written after that, talks about Bukit Panjang, the place where I have my home now, Bukit Panjang, and I looked at Bukit Panjang in terms of its history right from the beginning, as a geology before time. Bukit Panjang, the area, the hill, as a time traveler. So the poem is in 4 parts. One, Bukit Panjang, before time, before man, as a time traveler, and a recorder of things. Geology is a great series of images revealing the history of the world, of man, and so on. And then part 2 looks at just before the war, leading up to the war. Part 3 is after the war, when the village was beginning, small village becoming bigger village. Part 4 is when it becomes a sub, what I call a sub-town. Because Bukit Panjang now, you've got a mall, you've got so many things there, so many conveniences, and very soon you're going to have an MRT station, and so on. So I look at the history of the place, and that includes war. So the second part really talks about how we are preparing for war, and how the war outside Singapore, the war in China, the war in Europe, before the Japanese attacked in December 1942, specifically Singapore and Southeast Asia, how that experience shaped our sense of time and place, and of people and of extended families in China, for instance, in my case. So the war was good. And the other important fact is that during the war, while I attended Japanese school for about perhaps 1.5 years, I spent the rest of the war doing various things, growing vegetables, selling cakes, being a sales boy, and so on. So the experience helped you grow up much faster, far faster. You lost your boy, the boyhood pleasures very rapidly, and you were entering an adult world at a much younger age, and taking on responsibilities that you wouldn't otherwise have had to take on had there not been war. So the war was a tremendous shaping experience, and the memories of the war fed into subsequent development. In my case, for instance, when I learned more about, as I grew up, about the nature of colonialism, the nature of the Chinese experience, Chinese history, and so on, from my uncle who had come from Swata just before the war and stayed here till 1951. So it's a continuous process. You do not know when your experience had 4 or 5 years ago would reveal its shaping significance later on, when perhaps the framework of your thinking, when your guiding ideas, when your values, when your perceptions of current problems are enriched and deepened by earlier experiences.
Now, speaking about the earlier experience that you had during the war and moving forward after the war itself, how has that changed your perception of peace and also colonialism, in Singapore, and has your practice in terms of being a poet, has in fact morphed to the next level?
When you morph, you do not shed, you add. Especially when it comes to fundamental things. If you look at the curve of our history, starting from say just before the war, it has been a series really of experiences that led ultimately to the formation of Singapore out of its multiplicity of cultures and ethnicities. When we became independent, at the time when we separated from Malaysia. You see, every nation occupies a particular point in time when it comes into legal existence, when it comes into psychological existence, when it comes to political existence, when it becomes independent, when it says, we are a nation. Now, that is an idea, that is an aspiration, that is a vision, that is a hope. And after that, you've got to start making and doing. If we are lucky, like some nations are, and we weren't that lucky, where you have a considerable period of time in relative physical isolation with the strength to maintain your boundaries and to develop into what the Malays would say, satu bangsa, satu agama, satu bahasa. One language, one set of values, one religion if you want to, one morality, one ethnicity, one a philosophy, and one people, one language. There is a singularity. Nations with a long history, and a relatively long history, especially with isolation, like the Japanese, for instance. You can see Japanese. They have been isolated, especially since they were visited but never really colonized. Before the Mongols invaded under Kublai Khan, and so on, they were relatively isolated. After that, they were isolated, and after the Tokugawas came to power, after the Battle of Shikigihara, and so on, the third shogun, if I remember, declared Japan's isolation. So what happens? You have so many daimyos, whatever, so many islands. You develop a singularity, one culture, to a central authority, strictly enforced.
And has that changed the way you write poetry after the war?
In a way it does, because what happens? You see that singularity which we want to achieve for Singapore, but we don't have. And we are also caught in a very fast developing, globalizing world. We have to change to survive. We have to reinvent ourselves constantly. But why do I refer to that kind of singularity which enables people to say, I'm Japanese, I'm French, or I'm Jewish for that matter, or whatever. They've had that history to enable them to get that sense of identity, that sense of self-definition. But for us, we have not had that time. We have never been able to become national. One, before we became international. So how does it fit my poetry? Because of the themes I look at. The themes of nationalism, of forming the country, the problems of ethnicity, the relationships, the linkages, the cultural inheritance.
But when the British took over Singapore from the Japanese, did the British have the same idea that it's only the Caucasian that would dominate the market itself, including the arts and English language? Because you, as a English-speaking language family background, how do they view you when you first written your first poetry?
Now, I was fortunate because I had a tremendous mentor, Seamus Fraser, at school. While he was British and Oxbridge, he was actually from Oxford and so on, he was very sympathetic. But then we are dealing with an individual. By and large, you have to remember Britain after the Second World War. I think Britain realized she was a declining power. She had spent so much, she was impoverished. They owed America a lot of money. This is why all the American dollars we got from tin and rubber, we couldn't spend ourselves. The Brits took the thing to pay the war debt, the levies and so on. So Britain, in a way, knew she was a declining power. And this is why she started, especially when the Labour government took over under Clement Attlee, took over from Churchill, they started giving independence. So what happens is, there was a quiet transfer of political power into cultural and other forms of power, influence. And the language was one key instrument. They used that language to maintain their moral, economic position. They used it quite a lot. English language, that's why they talk about standard English, need for this and need for that and so on, because English became a major instrument of control. And also they redefined various things. They talked about post-colonial. They tried to exert influence through various ways, culturally, through British Council and so on. Now, I can understand why they did that, because the country has to survive. The country has to flourish. And if you look at Britain today, a great deal of income comes from the education it offers. Good quality education, no two ways about it. You go there, but you pay for it. And that's how they make money, and that's how they survive, because they've got no more colonies. You've got markets, right? You've got things to sell, you've got culture to sell. You've got great museums there. And British theatre is among the greatest theatres in the world. Right now, you go to Britain, it's tremendous. And people go there, and quite rightly. And so that their influence has morphed, as it were, changed. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Singapore, unfortunately, is well known for its economics, for its politics, and for having great political leaders, and a great example of economic success. So when you talk about Singapore, they would think of our first Prime Minister, you'll think about the success of the nation, etc. And you think about its increase in GDP. In other words, we are known for the right statistics, development, progress, etc. But we are a small place. And when it comes to the literature, I can assure you some of the poems we have are first rate. And I say this not because I'm a poet. I'm a teacher, and you do not say a thing is good unless you know it's good, because it has to survive on its own. But our market is so small, and the interest in us is not in our literature. We're too small. We're a very small market. Unlike in Africa. You can always edit this out. Let me see who is calling me. There's so many things I have to do. Ben, I'm in the middle of the recording. Can I call you later? Okay, bye.